limits, man. Whoa. Okay, calm down.
Well, it's a well-known fact. It's been confirmed by several UN sources as well, but and reporters. But definitely, when you're there, the healthcare workers and the officials will tell you this, and you see these injuries. Is that Israel is using weapons that have not been used before, with bodies being disintegrated and burnt, with using like drones, like the Hellfire drone, and other missiles that spew shrapnel everywhere. Okay, and as you know, if something's battle tested on the open market, its value increases, right? So the whole Gaza Strip has been used as a battleground for these weapons, right? For the weapon industry. So you saw people with with injuries that, for example, most injuries when it comes to amputations, they occur at the elbow or the knee. So you saw like mid thigh, mid arm amputations because of shrapnel and whatever injuries, and those don't do very well. And bodies disintegrated with using chemical weapons, and obviously phosphorus, we know, which really maims and injures in a very cruel way. Phosphorus pellets, they go right to the bone, okay, and then they stop because they need oxygen. As long as they have oxygen, they'll keep on burning until they hit bone, right? So you saw kids with those kind of injuries. And yeah, that was basically a certain fact that we all accepted, that these are weapons that have not been used before, and they're causing maximum injury to mostly children, but women and men as well. Yeah.
We have a slideshow that Dr. Elsherif put together. I did take out some of the more graphic images because I didn't want people to be upset, and I think that people who watch the show are already aware of it, and also so it wouldn't get removed by YouTube. But I thought we would show some of these images, and you could kind of talk us through them. And of course, anyone else who wants to comment can do so.
Following what Yasser said, in the north, we've seen a lot of injuries in the hands where they left a new type of weapons that explode when the people are going through the rebel and they are trying to look for their loved ones. Because whatever you hear in the news, if they say 34,000 or 40,000, whatever, these are the counted people. Like in the north, we would go through a building and they tell me there are 3 bodies under this building, and I ask why, and they say, well, there were 60 people here, we got 30 out, the rest are still under the rubble until now. So it's when people go to look for their belongings after the forces leave, they get injured specifically in their hands. And it spreads in their hands and arms, which is actually very bad injuries that my plastic colleague said that they've never seen this before. For the famine, the physicians and surgeons in the north, they are all underweight. They have been drinking the D5 and D10, which is the IV fluid that you give for the patients or the ICU. We've seen patients who come with dehydration with sodium of 178, and Dr. Aliya can collaborate on that. And dehydration, you examine them, the skin peels off when you examine them because they are skin and bone. Unfortunately, Al-Shifa, we've all seen in the news the number of mass graves and people under in the front yard of the Shifa hospital. The Shifa is a big complex, and Nasser as well. So it's very heartbreaking to see these children and these women dying from malnutrition and from dehydration, and the physicians as well who are working tirelessly unpaid for months. So this is an example of the injuries. If you're not killed, you're handicapped. So the shrapnel is spread. In medicine, the bullet has an entry and exit, but the shrapnel spreads all over the body. So this is an example of an 11 years old kid who I operated on, and he had an injury to his heart. Miraculously, he survived. But the thing is, he was attacked by a sniper, and the injury came from his neck, and the shrapnel spread it all the way down to his heart. And I'm sure David, some of these pictures actually are from David, and I think Yasser has some of them as well from the eye injuries. This is a kid. This is a 9-year-old kid. His job is he's an ICU technician. He's an X-ray technician at the ICU. How many people in the world? Where did he train? Where did he learn how to use the X-ray machine and the ICU? And this is our colleague Sam. We love him from Northwestern Chicago.
So what does he do as a technician?
His job, he walks around between patients and takes X-rays of the patients in the ICU. This is his job, and he's volunteer. He's not paid for that. He's 9 years old.
My God.
And Katie, I'd like to mention also that, in World War II, 650,000 children were evacuated from London, and 3,000 pregnant women were evacuated from London prior to the bombing for their protection.
Right.
And if we look at what's happening in Gaza, where we have 70% of the population, women and children, there were no measures taken to protect the children. And in fact, the children and the pregnant women appear to be the targets of these bombing campaigns. And we're seeing the use of white phosphorus on the children's hospital, which is a banned substance. And white phosphorus was also used by Israel in 2014 in Operation Protective Edge. And in that operation, there were 551 children killed. So these are banned illegal substances which cause major injuries, major pain and suffering. And we're seeing that the children and the women are the targets of these assaults.
Oh, last survivor from Al Shifa Hospital. So who was this?
This is Dr. Makhalalati. He's David's friend. David was sitting there next to, and he gave us the unfortunate, heroic scenes of the last few hours when he was interrogated, and how the whole Shifa hospital was totally destroyed. The infrastructure, the CT scan, the MRIs. He had 250 patients he was caring for, and he had no electricity, no oxygen. They bombed everything to make sure there is no Shifa hospital anymore. It will take them years to rebuild it. He gave us. We actually took a video. There is a video there, but it's an 8-minute video because of the heroic stories that he told us about how everything was destroyed in the hospital, and how they left the patients in the ICU, and paraplegic patient, quadriplegic patients. They forced them out with no help. It was very horrific scene, and unfortunately, I got to see this when I went to the north, and I saw all the destruction for the basement, and it's a big complex. It has transplant, it has dialysis, it has outpatient surgical specialties, neurosurgery, cardiac surgery, and all this was on the ground and burned out.
Oops, sorry.
So this is actually an important. This is the one that you just passed. This one, there is attacks not only on the healthcare workers but on the hospitals as well. This is a famous. It was on CNN. This is the opening on Nasser Hospital, where a rocket came here, but luckily it didn't destroy the whole hospital. But there was a 13-year-old girl in the bed in this room. She had bilateral amputations of her lower extremities, and all her family were killed in Gaza. And she was telling the nursing staff, "I wish that I have died with them." And that rocket came from the wall here that you see on the left, and it didn't fire, but it came right onto her head and killed her on the hospital bed. And this is the message they get. It's in Arabic, obviously, but they tell the residents to move from here to there, go from New York to New Jersey, go from New Jersey to Connecticut, and they bomb the areas where they go to as well, despite all the quote unquote secure areas that the population will not be attacked. And we ask people, why don't you listen? Okay, so the answer is, well, we already moved 5 times. I am from Beit Lahia. I am from Beit Hanun. I already moved 5 times. I'm living with 150 to 100 of friends and family in a 1-bedroom with 1 washroom. Where can we go? So they have no choice. They either stay or they have nowhere to go. This is how the hospital people. It's a big refugee camp with thousands and thousands of patients living in the hallway. And if you operate on someone, they don't know where to go, so they stay in the hospital because they have no houses and no homes. So they end up taking all the space. And on the second trip, all the patients from Nasser Hospital, they moved to European. So they stayed. The number were doubled. You barely find the space to move around in between the hallways. Yeah, this is an example of a family who used an elevator that's not working, and they made it their house. They're living there, they're eating, they're drinking, they're doing their laundry, and in this unused elevator. And Yasser and David, if you feel these are all our pictures. It's not mine. So this is the pollution around because all the waste from the OR and from the tents is there is nowhere to take it.
I mean, you can see that, I want to emphasize that the the people of Gaza were very proud, despite being in a concentration camp for at least 17 years and even longer, an open air concentration camp. I mean, they were very proud of their healthcare system. They had really, and those who have gone before the war will understand, they had really very advanced protocols and quality control and infection control. They trained their doctors as best as they could. They had good equipment, and they really cared for patients, good patient care, and very innovative physicians that really, use a lot of resources internationally and locally to get the job done. Really beautiful hospitals that they'd built despite the siege for over 17 years, despite all the restrictions. And to see it like this, and be homeless and living in where there's sewage, as you see here, mixing with the floors in a hospital that was before this a sterile place, um, was really a tragic to see. But I want to emphasize that they're among the most innovative physicians and surgeons and nurses that I've ever met. But of course, now with the war, with the European hospital becoming a refugee camp, when I was there in December, January, the first time, it was about 20,000 people seeking refuge inside and outside, as you saw. When I went in March, there was over 30,000 now. And obviously, when there's one bathroom for 300 or 400 people, the whole system's going to collapse. So you had multiple sewage leaks in the emerge, in the bathrooms here, and these are people that uh, were not homeless. Palestinians prided because they couldn't travel anywhere, right? So they couldn't go anywhere. They put all their resources into their homes. So their homes were their castle, were their lives, and they're well decorated. That because that's all they had was their homes, right? And so they lived in a very clean and organized and decent life with dignity and respect. And to be reduced like this, living in makeshift shelters on the floor with no bed, with no clothes, with no shoes. Many of these kids are walking around with no shoes. Their feet are getting infected. The infections are going to their legs are being amputated because either you cut the leg off of a 7-year-old child or they die, right? And because they just ran out. I mean, with an explosion they run out, they don't take anything with them. And when the Israeli forces force them to evacuate to a so-called safe zone, which they then start bombing again, which is the cruelty of this regime, or this armed forces. They tell them to go a safe spot, and then they start bombing that safe spot. I mean, in the history of modern a modern warfare, most armies will go around hospitals. This army goes through hospitals, right? And which is, indiscriminate and cruel. Anyway, so these kids are walking with barefoot, no shoes. They're not in school because all the schools have been destroyed. They're running around getting sick and then dying. And I mean, so those are the effects that you don't see. And I want to emphasize one more thing of what's going on in Rafah. Some of these people have moved about 4 or 5 or 6 times, right? um and basically, even the mere evacuation, I want people to understand, because if you're on the ground, you understand what's going on. Because when they're forced to evacuate, most of them are carrying their babies or their elementary school aged children who have no shoes. They either have multiple adults and children who are amputees. They have no legs, no arms, no wheelchair, so they're either on carts or they're being held. Even adults are being held, and they have their belongings, because right now that's what's going on in Rafah right now. As the Israeli army had 200,000 people evacuate, they're walking on foot. They have garbage bags or suitcases that they're dragging along. Their belongings, they've already been moved 5 6 times. They're hungry because there's no food. They're malnourished. They're thirsty. It's very hot there. So right now they're walking on foot in the heat. To where? To Khan Yunis, which has been completely destroyed. So there's nowhere to go. I mean, I mean, I think as far as in my life, this cruelty, in my opinion, is really unprecedented and hard to see.